We're continuing with education. Texas is allowing Bible teachings in public grade schools.
The state's boards of education passed the measure in a split decision. It applies to kindergarten through 5th grade. And here for more on this is Troy Miller. He's the president and CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters. Troy, thanks for joining us in the studio.
Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, so how will these Bible-based lessons help students as they get an education that's supposed to prepare them for work and for life?
So first of all, you have to understand that what this is going to do for students is give them a lot of the context behind some of the principles that our country was founded upon. So a lot of our country, the founding fathers, they really relied heavily on the Old Testament and New Testament scriptures to come up with some of the principles that we believe as a society that are here. And so this teaching, this education is really designed so that students can understand where did that originate? Where did it come from? How did we get these ideas? So that's really what's behind it all.
That's interesting, and I want to delve a little bit deeper on that. It sounds like a lot of it, well, as in, if you could tell us a little bit more on how it will be incorporated. It sounds like history is certainly part of it. And the reason I'm asking is because of the tension this is creating. Critics, for instance, say it might alienate kids with other faith backgrounds, but supporters also said that it might enrich the lessons. So how do you see this happening and how is it being implemented?
Yeah, I really see it as the latter, that it's going to enrich the lessons again, because it's going to help students understand today where did these principles come from. We find so many negative things in society today about a lot of the founding principles that our country is on. So this is going to help where that came from. On the negative side, as you said, they look at this. Well, look at teachings today. There's a lot of secular teaching that Christian students have had to sit through and listen to and be sort of indoctrinated on. And this is not about, these are not evangelistic lessons. These are not doctrinal lessons. These are not trying to push one religion over another religion. They're trying to give that understanding of where this base of thinking came from. And so that's, I think, the difference from what they might receive in, let's say, a supplemental program on the Bible or what they would get at their church or in their youth study.
Well, and this isn't the first time that states led by Republicans have introduced these religious or Christian teachings. For example, Louisiana, in that law back in June, their legislature said that schools have to display the 10 Commandments. And that was eventually struck down after there was a lawsuit and a judge said it's unconstitutional. But the state is appealing. But now, are there any concerns over separation of church and state involved in this?
Well, I always like to flip that on. There are concerns over the separation of state and church, not church and state. There was never really meant to be a separation of church and state. Church wasn't meant to stay out of or behind. The state was meant to stay out of the church. And so I don't think there's really any, because again, these are not evangelistic lessons. These are not taking a position on one religion is better than another religion. They're just taking the position of here's the founding principles. Here's where they came from. Here were the Old Testament teachings that the Jewish religious rabbis and looked at and how leadership should go, how a country should function, what's the importance of freedom, what's the importance of conscience, of your own conscience, of following your conscience. So that's going to give that foundation in those backgrounds. Another thing that you would look at, the Bible has been taught as a literary tool. So the Bible contains both the Old Testament and New Testament scriptures, a number of different poses. You know, there are letters, there is poetry, there are songs. So students have been taught that for a long time.
I see your point. I think it's a lot of historical context and just morals as well. So, but what about, let's say students with parents, especially that are not of Christian background, and maybe parents that do not want their children to be taught another religion, basically. Will they or should they have a say in this?
Well, I think they, as in a lot of subjects, we've always pushed that parents should have the final say in things. So students, for example, we've asked that Christian students can opt out of certain teaching and certain programs. And I think that should also be the case here. If there are parents who feel really strongly about this, then their kids should be able to opt out of this program. But again, I think it's really being overblown in the fact that this is not about religious teaching. It's much much more in a moral context or in a historical context. It's not, if you look at any of the lessons, they're not really trying to say Christianity is better than any other religion, or here's why Christianity is true. It's not an apologetic for Christianity. It's just framing Christianity and the importance, the role it plays in us, in our society, and the role it has played in the founding of this country.
Well, the golden rule is one of the lessons that's incorporated in this, and you can imagine that would benefit anyone from any faith. I mean, that's just common sense. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So, Troy, in your view, what is the biggest advantage of this type of lesson plan?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody would disagree with us that we have a moral crisis in the country today. We have a moral failure. You look at the amount of crime that has increased. If you look at the direction that this society is going, we have failed in that we used to teach these moral lessons and values in school systems for hundreds of years in this country, and then we pulled it out because of this fear of we were favoring one thought over another thought. And so I think as we look at the country today, I think we can all benefit from that idea of these moral underpinnings and foundings we have, because society, look, society is better. As you put the golden rule, how could that hurt society? Society is better when we respect one another and we treat one another how we would like to be treated ourselves. I don't know how anybody could be against that, or how you could be against, you should not murder, you should not steal, you should not take your neighbor's things. All of those things are these moral underpinnings. You should tell the truth. These are things that we find in the Old and New Testament scriptures.
So now that it is allowed, the Bluebonnet curriculum, it is of course an optional curriculum, but there is an incentive with that. I think it could be $60 per student. So how do you see this play out? Do you see it widely implemented also because of this incentive?
Well, I think we would hope that it would be widely implemented, and I think it's because, one, it's just beneficial to the school and the students. Set the dollars aside for a second. Again, I think the beneficial benefits behind it are the main reason I think it'll be implemented. But two, you look at Common Core. When Common Core came in, Common Core had a similar structure. You know, for schools it taught it, for schools that used the testing, they got extra points. Those points went towards the grants that the government did. So this is a common practice by the Education Department. That's not anything new.
Well, Troy Miller, President and CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me today.
Thank you.